a world where Marx Brothers fans gather around a podcast, they discuss horse feathers.
It's the Marx Brothers Council Podcast, episode 83, Horse Feathers, Reeducated. And first, we want to say thank you to Scott Saturnai for that voiceover and to Peter Freeman for the musical theme. Well, good morning, class. This is Professor Diamond, and I'm here, as always, with Professor Conium. Good morning, Professor.
Hello there. How are you?
I am very serious today and academic, and like all serious academics, we have a producer, a slick figure who, whatever his real name may be, has settled on the obvious showbiz name, Bob Gassell. Pleasure as always, Bob.
Hey guys, great to be here as always.
Class, we have silliness on the syllabus. Regular listeners will know that every few episodes we have been devoting a show to playing and sometimes responding to commentaries submitted by listeners on the films of the Marx Brothers. Next on our list is Horse Feathers. But first, a couple of housekeeping items. We want to first say thank you and welcome aboard to all of our new Patreon subscribers in the wake of last month's interview with the one and only Elliot Gould. Toward the end of this episode, please stick around for a Patreon update. We also want to say thank you to Will Sloan for saying nice things about our podcast on his podcast, The Important Cinema Club, in their recent episode devoted to the Marxes at MGM. Thanks for all of that, Will. Thank you for listening, and we will be listening to you too.
I really enjoyed that. That's a nice podcast.
Yeah, me too, and I'm looking forward to catching up with some of their archive. The Important Cinema Club. Now then, baboons, way back in our deep dive in episode 41, we told you what we think of horse feathers, and so did our special guest on that episode, Adam Gopnik. So now it is your turn, and our listeners, well, you really came through for us this time. And even after much careful editing, it's far too much commentary to squeeze into an episode. Bob, maybe we could talk about this a little bit before we get into it. The embarrassment of riches that were submitted to us.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank everyone. I made a call out on our social media platforms to get more people involved, to get new voices, and that call did not go unheeded as we got lots of new people contributing to this episode. That being said, with the new contributors and the old guard sending in clips, we just got way too many. We got close to 30 or around 30. I'm not sure exact number, but we just felt it was just way too much to squeeze into one episode, especially when you take into account that we're going to be responding to these. So what you're going to hear in this episode is what we feel are the cream of the crop, not necessarily the best contributions, but the ones we most want to respond to. And what we're going to do is in a couple of weeks, I will put out a separate thing in our podcast feed with all the contributions made to the podcast. And these will be uncut. The ones that you're going to hear today have been edited down to avoid repetition and to get to the point. So in a couple of weeks, we will put out a bonus podcast that'll be available to everyone, and you'll hear your contribution. That's it for me. Back to you, Noah.
And just to be clear, that omnibus episode coming up with all of the unedited commentaries, we're going to be releasing that on the regular podcast feed,
right,
not on Patreon. You don't need a subscription to hear
yes.
that.
Mm-hmm.
We will also feature one specific listener commentary on our next Patreon bonus episode. There was one that made us think so much, we thought we could spend a bonus episode on it for Patreon subscribers. So that too will be coming up in the next couple of weeks. Well, our first commentary is from friend of the show, former guest, Anthony Strand.
Of the 5 Marx Brothers movies that I really love, Horse Feathers has always been my least favorite. It kind of loses me at the end. I don't really think the football sequence is that funny. I've never really enjoyed it that much, so I have it a little bit lower than most of the other Paramounts. In my day job, I'm a school librarian. I teach library classes to students kindergarten through 5th grade. And one of the books that I read is Sharko and Hippo by Elliot Kalin, a book you might have heard of. It's about a shark and a hippo who are based on Chico and Harpo. The hippo keeps pulling the wrong thing out of his coat pocket, etc. Kids love the book. It's a big hit. It's always been a big hit. So I follow it up with a few Marx Brothers clips. I always start with the flashlight scene from Animal Crackers. And then I've shown the stateroom scene from A Night at the Opera. I've shown the lemonade stand from Duck Soup. I've shown the scene in Trentino's office in Duck Soup. And kids love it. I mean, these are kindergartners. They're 5 and 6 years old. And what has delighted me is that a lot of them keep asking to see the Marx Brothers. Can we see those funny brothers? Can we watch the Sharko and Hippo video again? But so with this podcast coming up, I decided maybe the kindergartners can help me appreciate the end of Horse Feathers. Because they're laughing so hard at these other clips. I thought, surely they'll laugh at this one. And I was right. On the last day of school, I had a class of kindergartners, and we watched the last 18 minutes of Horse Feathers, starting from when Harpo and Chico go to kidnap the 2 football players. And it was so fun for me just to see how the kids reacted. When Chico asked for the pick, and Harpo lets a pig out of his bag, the kids were locked in right away because they recognized that as a callback to Animal Crackers, or for them, a callback to Sharko and Hippo, right? That's what Hippo does in the book, pull out the wrong thing. So they laughed at that. But then when they're in the room and Chico asks Harpo to pull out a rope and he pulls out a rope, one kid was very surprised. He actually said out loud, "Wow, he understands now?" Because that's not what Harpo does. He doesn't pull out the right object. So that felt like a reversal. That felt like a twist. Obviously, he throws it out the window and all that, and kids laughed. I was really, again, interested to see what would happen once we got to the football field, and they continued to love it. Like, these children convinced me that this is, in fact, a great comedy scene. They really, really went nuts when Harpo pulls off his shirt and it becomes this long shirt. One girl yelled, "Rewind it! I want to watch it again!" When Harpo hands Darwin the football and then, does the fake out and they tackle the guy. That got some applause, actually. They loved Harpo chasing the dog. Of course, kids love to see a dog. And then when he rides the chariot across the goal line, the kids were going nuts. Harpo is truly their hero. And it's so reassuring, and it gives me such hope for the future to see how much these kids love Harpo. They also kept commenting on the football action, which is something that would never have occurred to me. Like, some of the kids were following it as an actual football game that they wanted to, see who won. And finally, they were very confused when the 3 Marx Brothers all marry Thelma Todd at the end, because they didn't even know Thelma Todd was in it. But again, they laughed. Funny's funny.
My first thought is, why on earth had I never heard of that book before?
Sharko and Hippo. Yeah, I think it has been posted about in the council group here and there, perhaps by Anthony. But it's taking it to another level to then use the book as an opportunity to expose children to the Marx Brothers. Thanks for doing that, Anthony. And I'm sure it warms the heart of every listener as much as it warms mine. Can we see those funny brothers? I mean, a room full of young children asking to see those funny brothers. What could be better?
And I particularly like the observation that all kids love a dog.
Yeah. Yeah. And just the idea that Anthony's appreciation of the football sequence, which I have to say is often I've found a little challenging too, sort of being hipped to it by a room full of kids, not only laughing at it, but taking it seriously as a game is also just delightful. I also want to mention Anthony Strand and I recently recorded a really interesting conversation that will be available soon on the Tough Pigs podcast about Fozzie Bear and the vaudeville tradition. So keep your eyes open for that, or your ears. All right. Our next listener commentary is from Paula Spiden.
In my world of Bloody Marys, petting dogs, and corn, I lead a very nondescript existence. My ability to land a joke truly requires the assistance of Captain Sully to make that landing smooth. Oh, that was really cheesy. Even I can't stand it. But my point is proven. I'm just not funny. But I digress. There are those that are not me. Those rare folks that seduce and ensnare us with joviality. As Harpo so aptly points out, a humble sword and a fish make the promise to us that it will lead to hilarity and tomfoolery. Okay, yes, I realize that Harpo comes after the initial door interaction, so his promise would be nothing as we've already seen it, but just go with me here, would ya? Just as an aside, it has been said that when the internet started its popularity boom and people needed to password all their accounts, that the most utilized password was, you guessed it, swordfish. Our boys should be proud. I am, however, guessing that many people soon became sad, as hackers are bound to be Marx Brothers fans too. I adore everything about this scene. It was once asked on here, if you could have any one souvenir from any Marx Brothers set, what would you take? There is no hesitation in my answer. It would be the door from Horse Feathers. Thank you all for listening. It's always been very important to me to get my views on entertainment out to people I don't know. Cheers to all.
Well, Paula, I think there's some evidence there that you are funny.
And of course, this brings up the question of what prop souvenir would you guys like to have from one of their films?
The birthmark.
Yeah, the Bogart painting, I guess, is too obvious an answer, and that's the first thing that comes to mind. I imagine it's the first thing that comes to many minds. Mm-hmm. I also think just any article of clothing that is recognizably a Marx Brothers clothes would be quite something just to behold in real life. Many have had that opportunity at the Hollywood Museum exhibit currently running. That has some Marx Brothers costume pieces. And just seeing a coat on a hanger that is just obviously a Groucho Marx tailcoat or a Chico double-breasted corduroy blazer, there's something kind of exciting about that. Also, as we, I think, have discussed in the past, anybody you know who's a big Marx Brothers fan, it's always worth just checking to see if swordfish is their password for things. You may get lucky. All right. Matthew, I wonder what Ben Wink has to say about Horse Feathers.
I wonder too.
With the first round of 1930s films getting added to the public domain ranks this forthcoming January in the U.S., what are the odds that some wonderful collector is merely biding their time until the rights to the 1932 titles expire? Could there be a complete print or at least a complete reel of the hack section of Horse Feathers out in the wilderness somewhere? Could there be some soul who just doesn't want to give a dime to Universal? Is it too much to hope for even a beaten-up complete print to surface at this point? Are those too many questions? Are there any answers? Any bones, any rags, any bottles today? Now, for my mildly earned money, Horse Feathers has the best overall music of any Marx film. Now, I realize that's a bit of a cheat, given how one song is spread out to each of the four brothers to individually perform, but when you take the charming Everyone Says I Love You, combine it with my overall favorite Groucho musical performance of I'm Against It, I Always Get My Man, and sprinkle in the rambunctious title and end credits music, it results in Horse Feathers not having a musical turkey to reluctantly sit through or fast forward to get past. And finally, I suppose Jennings is our villain, kind of, sort of, in this one. And what is his master plan here? We only know he's gambled his bankroll to bet on dear old Darwin, but how much money does Jennings think he's actually going to win on the game? What kind of odds could he possibly be getting? Zeppo says that Huxley hasn't won a game since 1888. That makes for 44 seasons of solid evidence that Huxley is a guaranteed gridiron loser against any opponent for any game on any given Saturday. Wouldn't the better play have been getting Mullen and McCarty to play for Huxley instead, getting the surprise win over Darwin? But no, not Jennings, big dope. And remember that by the end of the movie, Jennings ends up being so insignificant that we don't even get cutaways of close-ups of him in the stands, seeing him get more and more angry, slowly getting his comeuppance at that not well-thought-out plan, and it evaporates before his eyes, ultimately due to the quartet of insanity, driving a garbage wagon filled with footballs into the end zone. Instead, we get, well, nothing really.
That is a very, very, very astute observation that had never occurred to me before. That he's throwing this absurd plan into operation when he can be as sure as he can be of anything that he doesn't need to.
Yes.
That had never occurred to me. Do we have a hunch, any of us, or more than a hunch, as to whether or not when the copyright expires, it is going to miraculously turn up? I mean, I've got absolutely no inside information at all on that, but I've just heard it hinted so many times that my money is slightly on yes.
I don't know. I don't really see. I mean, it's not impossible, it seems to me, that its entrance into the public domain could hasten some kind of renewed interest in the film, or in finding, like, maybe more people will be exposed to it now, and then will notice that there's this mangled scene, and maybe the search will intensify somewhat. But I'm not sure there's a straight line from public domain status to restoration.
Well, only I was thinking specifically of somebody who's sitting on it, fessing up. You know,
I don't know. It would be a little almost perverse to have been sitting on it when the Blu-ray restorations came out, and to deny the world a better version of Horse Feathers.
I suppose that's a good point. Yeah, because he's still not going to make any money, is he? So he may as well have played the hero. And yeah.
I guess there could be a scenario where someone did have an uncut copy and tried to sell it to Universal, but wanted too much money. And when Universal turned them down, they just decided to hang on to it for a decade and either put it out themselves or sell it to the highest bidder.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, it's also possible someone could have come into possession of it since the Blu-ray restorations were released, and therefore it wasn't a thing then. It's possible. What about the idea of Horse Feathers having the best music in any Marx Brothers film, in Ben's comment? To what extent do you agree with that?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, as he says, you know, it is a limited musical selection, but it's got a great, it's possibly my favorite actually of the Groucho imposter songs. I think I slightly prefer that to Animal Crackers and Duck Soup. And Everyone Says I Love You is such a charmer, and it is such a lovely thing for them all to get a shot at it. I maybe would sign on the line there. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I mean, Animal Crackers is the other contender, I think, but note for note, maybe Horse Feathers. I'll bet you're wondering what Jim Genowine has to say.
Certainly am.
Hi guys, Jim Genowine of New York City. At the start of Horse Feathers, Groucho does that great set piece where he sings and dances around the dais, or the desk, I guess it is, as all the gray-beard academics act as his dim-witted chorus. Near the start of the dance, Groucho does that amazing move with both legs, kind of corkscrewing them left and right, back and forth. He does the same move in Animal Crackers. What is the name of that dance move, and where in vaudeville did he pick that up? It's world-class dance athleticism, in my opinion, and it's one of the many elements that prove Groucho to be an all-around comedy master.
I think it is generally called the corkscrew, isn't it?
Yeah, we usually call that a corkscrew kick, and Jim uses that word in his commentary.
Have you ever seen anybody do it besides Groucho or somebody imitating Groucho?
No, only Groucho and his imitators. And his imitators, and I include myself in this, have never quite gotten it right. I mean, there's a lot of credible corkscrew kicks out there. But Groucho's physical moves, as always, can't really be replicated. Councilmember Lindsay Lavich has posted some videos of learning and practicing the kicks. And Lindsay has mastered it impressively enough to put video side by side with Groucho. And it holds up, really impressive and viewable in the council group. Of course, Frank Ferrante has been doing the corkscrew kicks as part of his many Groucho performances for decades. And I did them in I'll Say She Is. They were difficult to learn. One thing I noticed about the corkscrew kicks is that when we did the staged reading of I'll Say She Is at the first Marx Fest in 2014, and I was just wearing Groucho's standard clothes, when I did the corkscrew kicks, it was a big hit. It got a little ripple of applause, the kind of spark of recognition. But in the actual show, because of the Napoleon pants that I had to wear. I could never sell the kicks quite as well. It was just not as fluid to move in them. And fluidity is the Groucho thing. What's crazy about Groucho is he does it so slowly. I mean, it's actually surprisingly slow in Animal Crackers and in Horse Feathers. It's slightly different move in the two films too. The Horse Feathers kicks are lower, but Groucho just seems to be obeying rules of gravity that don't apply to the rest of us. And his corkscrew kicks are so round and fluid and slow and floating. It's really quite impressive. But I would certainly tip my hat to both Frank and Lindsay as having gotten damn close. I won't give myself that much credit.
I can do it on radio, but not on stage.
Oh my God, Matthew, that's amazing. Folks, I wish you could see this. Matthew, oh my God. Matthew is doing burpees now in the corner.
It was the moonwalk of its day.
It was the moonwalk of its day, yeah. All right. Let's hear from Eleanor Kennedy.
One of my favorite things about Horse Feathers is everyone says I love you, because it demonstrates subtly that everyone says I love you in their own way. Zeppo says it straight, Groucho says it cynically, Chico says it in his own inimitable way, and Harpo says it with his harp. The song tells us that everyone can say I love you as only they can.
A lovely observation. Again, not something that has struck me, but yes, Zeppo does a straight man version, Groucho does a cynical version, Chico does a whimsical version, Harpo does an ethereal version. Obviously, because the Harpo that plays the harp is that Harpo. So the only thing we don't get is a version from the other Harpo, which I suppose would be a kind of a Spike Jones sort of thing, played on tin cans and pots and pans and things, wouldn't it? But yeah, lovely observation.
Yeah, beautiful. And you could compare it in a way to the succession of Chevalier imitations. In a way, that's where you get the other Harpo, his take on the Chevalier song, which is a trick and a gag. Yeah, beautiful observations. And now let us hear from Ben Urish.
I was part of a film society in the 70s and 80s that showed films mostly on a university campus. And at one point, we scheduled Horse Feathers. This was on a weeknight, like Wednesdays, like at 7 and 10 o'clock. Wanted to book a short with it. I think the short where the Three Stooges play football. But we didn't have enough money in the budget, so Horse Feathers was going to play on its own. Okay, we booked things about a semester in advance. So finally the semester comes around and Horse Feathers is playing. I am helping the box office person for the 7 o'clock show. I hear the film start in the theater. I don't want to miss Groucho's opening, having seen the film before. So I rush in, and what do I see on the screen? I see the football game from Horse Feathers. So I tear out of the theater, through the lobby, throw open the door, run up the flight of stairs to the projection booth, and running in a panic, the projectionist and the head of the student activities council are there. And I say, stop, you've got the wrong reel on. This is the end of the film. And they said, no, at the last minute, we got the budget money and we went ahead and booked a short. And I immediately knew what had happened. They had booked the Pigskin Capers short, which is, of course, a cut down of the end of Horse Feathers. And I said, it's not a real short. It's the end of the movie. Well, that didn't make sense to them. And I argued and said, stop it. Just stop it now. Start the film. You're spoiling the ending. But they wouldn't do it. So it played through. I was pretty pissed off and kind of depressed about what was going to happen. So I went back down, went into the theater. The film started playing. People loved it. Big laughs all the way through. Everything you have read about or thought would get a big laugh does. When it gets to the point where the football game is starting, people really very quickly, of course, figured out that, oh no, we just saw this a little over an hour ago. There was an audible groan and then grumblings from the audience, and people started filtering out. And the more it became evident after barely just a minute or so that they had already seen this, a lot of them just got up and walked out, even in the dark of the theater. And they were muttering and grumbling angrily all the way out. By the time the film actually ended, there were probably just a few members of the Film Society and a small handful of the public left. Very disappointing. Anyway, that's my horse feathers story, and I'm sticking to it.
It'd be lovely if there was just one person left in the audience furiously applauding.
And just to clarify, the cut down that he's talking about, the pigskin caper, was a piece put together by Castle Films in the early 1970s for the home movie market. It was released on 8mm and Super 8 and 16mm as well. So it also ended up in the rental circuit.
There were a few of these, right? The war sequence from Duck Soup.
Yeah, This Is War, The Stowaways. Yeah.
This is a nice set of comments next from a father and daughter team.
Hi, Marx Brothers Council. I'm Howard Megdal.
And I'm Juliet Megdal.
And we have been watching one by one Marx Brothers films together. Juliet, what have you seen?
I've seen Duck Soup, Animal Crackers, Monkey Business, Horse Feathers, and The Night at the Opera. And that is actually the way that I would rank them from first to last.
So Horse Feathers is actually my favorite film. Juliet, what were some of your favorite scenes in the movie?
So one of my favorite was the scene at the speakeasy where they kept saying swordfish and they kept locking each other out. That was really funny. They said, "Isn't it illegal to buy football players at a speakeasy?" That's really funny.
We got to have a fun conversation about what prohibition was. And I'm a sports journalist for a living, so I think there's an understanding about the buying of football players here, too. Juliet, what else for you?
The other scene that I really liked was the opening song of Whatever It Is, I'm Against It, and when they all like dance around each other, and that's really funny to me.
I think it's really good. You know, that scene on the boat, I just absolutely love, to watch Juliet rolling her eyes when Thelma Todd was talking, the baby talk. But it's great because Groucho just doesn't put up with it at all. And so if I had any sort of thing I would change in this, I think the football part of the movie. I know we're leading up to the big game with Mullen and McCarty, but it could probably be a little shorter. But other than that, just a movie that I absolutely love. Juliet, you ranked it, you said 4th of the 5 we've seen so far. But did you enjoy it? Did you love it?
The only reason why it's so low is because the others are so good.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, much like the Anthony Strand comment at the top of the show, it always does our hearts some good when children are taking an interest in the Marx Brothers.
It's surprising to me that there is such a mixed reaction to the football scene. That's always been one of my favorites since day one. Maybe because I'm a big football fan, so I appreciate it.
I always found it funny. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought it was extremely funny, and I know nothing about British sport, let alone American. So there's no recognition of the game at all. I just liked all the antics.
I've always found it to be kind of a drag. I mean, I think we talked about this in episode 41. I mean, there are things in the scene that I like, but there are things that could be done in any scene. Like Groucho's commentary in the booth. Okay, Mr. Moskowitz, I love that. Some of Chico's, patter is great in that scene.
What I love about it is that it's funny, but they totally stay in character, unlike the MGM, where it just never feels right that they care about the plot line or the romantic lovers or that crap.
I thought your comment was interesting, Bob, in our recent bonus segment about what we would change in each film. You suggested that if they had waited to film the football sequence until Chico's leg had recovered, and if Chico had been at his full physical best, maybe that scene would have been helped along a little. And I thought that was a very good point. I mean, one of the things I do like about it, and I am definitely I can't tell the difference between this and a regular football game. It's people running around. I don't know what football players are trying to accomplish out there. So it's not about that. But But I do love the idea of the Marx Brothers, the four Marx Brothers, like running around in a field together. That feels very, forgive me, Matthew, very Hard Day's Night, and sort of appealing. Just the four of them just running rampant around a field, and we almost get that feeling, but not quite because of the obvious double who's taking Chico's place.
And the thing, I think I've said this before as well, but the thing that really tips it over into good for me is the fact that the score does go up and nobody's questioning, that yeah. they are registering as legitimate goals or whatever they're called.
Yeah, it's better than the racetrack finale of A Day at the Races.
Indeed.
Okay. Hey, our next commenter, a familiar voice to all our listeners, podcast guest, Kathy Beale.
Kathy Beale here. I first encountered horse feathers in the pages of The Marx Brothers at the Movies by Paul Zimmerman and Burt Goldblatt. And yes, I'm one of the lucky few who owns a copy of it, and in fact have since the book first came out. The wordplay struck me as extremely clever, but it would be years before I could test that impression. The closest I came to the film for years was coming across the Time magazine cover with the brothers in the garbage chariot in their football outfit, which I, of course, had to copy and take home and stare at periodically. Ah, the plight of the girl geek. It was decades before I actually saw the film, and what a relief that the expectations that Zimmerman and Goldblatt set for it actually were met, unlike with many of the later films from the brothers' catalog, unfortunately. My favorite scene was and remains the speakeasy, from Chico filling differently labeled bottles with obviously the same hooch, to Groucho trying to negotiate his way into the door, to harpoing throughout the bar. And of all the Harpo antics, my favorite was and remains hearing cut the cards and doing just that. My affection for this particular interpretation of words continued when I stood in the wings and watched Seth Sheldon recreate the bit during every single performance of I'll Say She Is. So there, now you have two reasons to hate me.
What did you mean by that?
I guess that some might envy Kathy for being on the front lines of modern day Marxism
and owning that book, which I've never even seen a copy of, let alone purchased.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I've also got very, very warm memories of Cut the Cards, because it's the bit I can remember most from the first time I saw it, watching it with my dad. It made him absolutely sort of literally collapse with laughter. So yeah, that's a very, very warm memory for me.
Yeah. Yes, as Kathy's comment suggests, that was a gag from I'll Say She Is. I imagine it probably originated before I'll Say She Is, because it's such an... one of the things that makes that gag so great is that it's so obvious. It's just the most obvious thing for Harpo to do, and yet you really don't think he's going to do it. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen, and it happens so perfectly. It's so deftly executed. I love Joe Adamson's comment that the guys at that table playing cards don't react very much. They seem very tired of having people cut their decks of cards in half.
It's great because it's two jokes at the same time, isn't it? It's a play on words, but also Harpo is the only person equipped to actually deliver it.
Yes.
Because nobody else is going to be able to do that visual joke except somebody who can pull an axe out of his coat. So it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this next listener is another previous guest on the Marx Brothers Council podcast, a voice and personality well known and well loved by our listeners.
Hi, this is Eddie Deason. I want to say my thoughts on my favorite Marx Brothers film, Horse Feathers. Horse Feathers has always been my favorite Marx Brothers film. I'm a purist. I like, of course, the first five. The first five are my favorite. Horse Feathers is my very, very favorite. Monkey Business, a close second. Then I might go to Duck Soup, then to Animal Crackers, then to Coconuts. But those are my favorites. It's an interesting irony that Zeppo it'll be an enigma for all time. It's some kind of a weird oxymoron in the universe that Zeppo Marx, the single most ridiculed figure in the history of show business, the single most throwaway, non-interesting, dispensable character in the history of showbiz, made the Marx Brothers films better, and we don't quite know why. I don't know why, but he made them better. He gave them a better balance. It seems to be that Harpo and Chico would go off to one side in the first five, and Groucho and Zeppo would go off to one side, and that gave the Marx Brothers a nice balance. Anyway, it has my favorite opening Marx Brothers scene, my favorite Groucho scene. The opening number where Groucho is the college professor. Now, I remember I watched this film when I was a little kid. I watched it late at night. It was like 1 a.m, beautiful romantic moment I never forgot in the history of comedy. This is my heart as a comedian. And I was up late at night, and my dad, turned the TV on for me. I was like 8 years old or whatever. My dad turned on the TV, and I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, "Watch for the scene where Groucho dances with the professors." He goes, "It's the best scene in the movie." And this is my favorite Groucho scene to this day. I love Groucho dancing with the professors. It's 2 numbers. All the other Groucho always gets a great singing and dancing number in every movie pretty much. But this is 2 numbers. It's I always get my man and whatever it is I'm against it combined. So you get 2 great numbers. We see Groucho, one of the great comedians, one of the great dancers in the history of comedy, doing his great number. It has my favorite Chico number, the number with Thelma Todd, when he plays the piano, that wonderful song. I think it's I'm Daffy Over You. I think it's a Chico composition. And he does a scene with Thelma Todd. All us Marx Brothers fans know what's going on there. You look very carefully. You see Thelma kind of give him a little pinch on the rear end. You can kind of see it. They're kind of flirting with each other. Harpo's great, as always. Harpo, I think, is his most animalistic. He's the most animal in this movie. He's wild through the whole movie. He's great. The football scene might be the funniest scene in the history of sports comedies. It's brilliant. Now, this movie breaks your heart in one way. Obviously, the desecration, the broken film, the hurt film in the one scene, and it's so sad. It's kind of like a Da Vinci painting where somebody slashed it with a knife, or a Michelangelo statue where somebody knocked its head off or whatever. It's a terrible tragedy that happened. I wish it could be fixed. I guess it's that way for all time, and it's sad because the movie's a beautiful masterpiece. And even though we don't have Maggie in it, it's a great movie, and I love it so much. Thank you very much. And by the way, keep up the great work, please.
Okay, for those of you keeping score, we now know 2 things about Eddie's dad. He wanted him to watch the opening of Horse Feathers, and he didn't care if Eddie ran out and played in traffic.
There's some interesting bits there. One thing that sticks in my mind, and I wonder if I agree. Do you think Zeppo Marx is the most ridiculed figure in the history of show business? Certainly he's a contender. I wonder who some other possibilities might be. Ed Wood comes to mind.
Yeah, but in terms of performer, though, somebody who actually makes their living by entertaining you in person and doesn't. I think he's got to be somewhere near the top of the list, hasn't he? If not right up there.
Well, in that category of sort of bad performers, that is a class of, and even a kind of vaudeville subspecialty, right? Like the Cherry Sisters, or oh goodness, what's her name?
Florence Foster Jenkins.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes. But Zeppo's not quite that. He's not so bad that it's funny how bad he is. Right? He's more of a non-entity than a
he's a sort of
bad entity.
What's that thing that
a cipher?
No, like it kind of implodes, sucks you in.
Black hole?
No, can't think of it. Anyway, he's one of them. For sure.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting point. I don't have I'm not disputing what Eddie says, but it's an interesting.
He's a kind of a vacuum. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Also, that business of 2 songs in one. I mean, I love how I'm Against It becomes I Always Get My Man, but I actually don't think it's the only time we get that. It's a particularly vivid example. But a lot of the Kalmar Ruby Groucho songs do that.
Harry for Captain Spaulding into Hello, I Must Be Going.
Yeah, that's the same song. I think even though they might be separate songs in terms of the available sheet music, I think in Duck Soup, we think of The Laws of My Administration as a song unto itself, but I really think that's the same song as When the Clock on the Wall Strikes 10. It feels very continuous and the same sort of musical atmosphere. And then Dr. Hackenbush becomes a song called A Doctor is a Man's Best Friend. A lot of these songs have 2 choruses, alternate between two cars. I think
Yeah.
Go West, Young Man does that too. Anyway, it's a somewhat common Kalmar and Ruby trope. I think it might, and a future commenter will address this, so I won't say much now, but I think it's also is found in Gilbert and Sullivan, and that might be why we're seeing it in the Kalmar and Ruby Marx Brothers songs.
Another point that he made that I thought was quite interesting is I've always been very skeptical of the idea that the fact that the films he's in are better than the films he isn't in is anything to do with him. You know, the correlation is not causation, and so on. But I do quite like Eddie's point that it's nice when they split into two pairs. And I wish there was more actually of Groucho and Zeppo. It seems to me that there's never quite enough of that, and it's all you always get. You know, you always get the best of Zeppo, whatever that may be. I think in those moments. So it is. I think it's a shame that we don't get more of that even in the films that he's in.
Yeah, I wonder if not for Margaret Dumont. I mean, obviously, I'm glad Dumont is there, but Groucho had such a great foil from their second Broadway show onward. In a way, maybe it arrested Zeppo's development as Groucho's foil. Next, we're going to hear from listener John J. McKinney.
Hello, my name is John J. McKinney. The J stands for plenty. Now, I've just finished watching Horse Feathers on the Silver Screen Collection. I tried to listen to the commentary, but quit after about 15 minutes because the guy kept spouting facts that I knew that were wrong, thanks to hanging out with you lot all these years. Why did they hire that guy instead of one of you? Also, I had forgotten the joke about Groucho having a chauffeur but no automobile, which Paul McCartney would use some 32 years later in the song Drive My Car. So I'd like to ask you, Bob, given your Beatles expertise, if Paul ever said whether he knew he was nicking the Marx Brothers when he used that joke. And I'd like to ask you, Matthew, if you could possibly care less. Finally, since I name-checked Bob and Matthew, it's only fair that I send regards to Noah Diamond and his alter ego, Jonah Spade, who famously didn't have the heart to join a club. Cut the cards.
And that suits me fine.
By the way, it was Chico who had the chauffeur with no car, not Groucho.
Right, yeah, and Groucho says, I would have kept the car and sold the chauffeur. Yeah, that's right. But kind of a brilliant connection. I never thought to connect that with Drive My Car. I've got no car and it's breaking my heart, but I've got a driver and that's a start. This is probably a coincidence, but it's possible. I mean, the Beatles were asked about the Marx Brothers in some interviews because they were often compared to the Marx Brothers, especially when they started making movies. And that comparison only goes so far. You know, the Beatles aren't that much like the Marx Brothers, but they were four funny guys who had this kind of unity together, a beloved foursome.
Yeah, if there was anything really there, we would have done an episode about it, regardless of what Matthew said.
Oh, no, we wouldn't.
But I do think there's something there, particularly in Hard Day's Night. But I know there's an interview where John Lennon is asked, you know, do you like the Marx Brothers? And he says, yes. So, you know, it's possible that they had been exposed recently to the Marx Brothers and that idea of having a chauffeur but no car might have stuck in Paul's head. But that aside, it's an interesting connection that never occurred to me despite excessive exposure to the song and the movie.
Remind me who it is that does the commentary, Horse Feathers commentary.
Oh, I'm not sure.
And why wasn't it us?
It's who you know.
Critic F.X. Feeney.
Oh, that's right, yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I know the guy. He's a film critic and writer. I can picture him. He's in Robert Whitey's Woody Allen documentary.
Oh, okay.
With things like that, it is often frustrating, like when you are, like a great deal about something, and for a commentary, they get like a very capable writer and critic who reads up on the subject matter and usually does a solid job with the commentary, but for experts, it can be frustrating when it's a non-expert.
But full marks to Jeffrey Vance for his Animal Crackers commentary, because he says nice things about me on it.
Oh, I haven't listened to it, but I will now. And now let's hear from another listener commenter.
This is Jay Leon, longtime council member and even longer time Marx Brothers fan. Thanks to Noah, Matthew, and Bob for the opportunity to speak about my observations of Horse Feathers, my favorite Marx Brothers movie. I believe this is the first of their films that uses fast motion shots to enhance a joke or speed up the pacing. Here it happens when Harpo tackles the referee, but it's also done in Duck Soup, Groucho sliding down the fire pole, and Night at the Opera, Harpo descending the circular staircase to greet Chico. One might argue that the brothers are funny enough without needing artificial post-production gimmicks. I think these fast motion shots speed up the pace and make the films funnier. Besides the jump cuts and editing problems, I do have a number of minor criticisms. For me, Harpo's character is more enhanced with the costume from Animal Crackers than the rags he wears in Horse Feathers. The rags imply he's some sort of hobo or vagrant, which take away from his otherworldly persona. It may even possibly take away from the breakaway clothing joke when he's told to take that coat off by Mullen and McCarty. The same joke seems much funnier in Animal Crackers and Night at the Opera when he's wearing clothes that aren't supposed to break away. My last point is rather controversial, but here it goes. I love all of Chico's piano solos, including this one. I love his chemistry with Thelma Todd while he's playing it, but I believe it's his weakest performance of all his movies. For one thing, unlike most of his other solos, the arrangement does not include any tempo changes, genre changes, classical introductions, or key changes. Although he's mostly limited to white keys and C major, there are other piano features where key changes occur. The Beer Barrel Polka, the piano duet in the Big Store, even his feature in A Day at the Races, which switches from minor to major and Beck. In short, this performance contains no musical contrast compared to his others. But also, Chico's performance is not up to his usual standards. His left hand, never his strongest suit, is practically non-existent, and the orchestra takes on the responsibility for providing the accompaniment. In the second chorus, he seems to be having trouble keeping up the tempo with the orchestra, and the solo lacks the facility with arpeggios and runs he usually displays in his other movies. But in the months before Horse Feathers was filmed, Chico was recovering from a car accident and likely did not have the opportunity to play the piano regularly for many weeks. I believe he was simply out of practice during Horse Feathers, and this shows in his collegiate solo.
And that was Jay Leon, dyslexia's answer to Jay Leno.
Well, I got a couple of points I want to chime in here with. I'm not a music critic or an expert, so I'm not going to dispute any of his specific music criticisms of Chico's performance. But it should be clarified that the injury happened during the filming of Horse Feathers, and almost certainly after the music lesson scene was filmed. And even if it somehow did happen before, I can't imagine that Chico couldn't have practiced while laid up with a knee injury.
As far as that goes, I sort of admire Jay's analysis. It's never stood out to me as an inferior Chico solo, and the section where he sings and flirts with Thelma Todd is so charming. That's always what I notice. But I don't know. Jay sounds pretty credible, and if I just watched it looking for that and compared it to a couple of other Chico solos, I might well agree. I do agree with the point about the sped up film in the football sequence feeling a little beneath the boys.
It feels to me, from a production standpoint, it seems to me is that these things were filmed, and then while they were editing or putting it together, it felt like it was dragging a little, and they decided to speed it up. I don't know if it ever intended to be that way when they were actually shooting it.
I have a very specific issue with speeded up film, which is I don't mind it particularly if the entire shot is sped up. What I don't like is, like, for instance, the bit he referenced in Night at the Opera, where you can see the speeding up stop and start, because that junction is
Yeah.
always so overt that it kind of kills it for me.
Yeah. Matthew, do you think Gavin Reed has any comments on Horse Feathers?
I wouldn't mind betting.
Hello, Marx Brothers Country Podcast. I'm Gavin from Glasgow, and here are my Horse Feathers thoughts, feelings, and tangential ponders that I've waxed wroth about. As a kid, I was not only confused by Zeppo being ironed by Groucho on the VHS and the DVD, but I was also confused by the title, as it didn't relate to anything in the film. I did my research, and Horse Feathers is old slang for saying that's ridiculous, that's stupid, that sort of thing. And seeing that it's slang, that means it doesn't translate well internationally either. In Germany, it's called blossoming nonsense. France, the Four Madmen. Italy, the Marx Brothers at college. And in Portugal, geniuses of the ball. This film could easily be remade into a Revenge of the Nerds, Porky's, or American Pie film. It's all there, very tame, but it's all there. You've got the college setting, authority mocking, focus on mischief and subversion, and raunchy humour, and boundary pushing for the time. So fun observations. The Speakeasy on 24 Elm Street. Did this inspire the street name for A Nightmare on Elm Street? I felt so clever when I saw my first Marx Brothers reference out in the wild. I figured out from the back of the VHS of the film Swordfish, the one that stars John Travolta, Hugh Jackman, and Halle Berry, was clearly a Marx Brothers reference because it was about computer hackers. I felt so clever, but I didn't really have anybody to show off how clever I was. And is this the first film where the brothers drink alcohol? And they're such tiny glasses of beer as well. Harpo is peak Paramount magic realism in this film. The moment he pulls a steaming cup of coffee from his pocket is pure brilliance. I was so inspired by this as a kid that I cut a hole in my own jacket pocket and then into the lining, and that meant that I could pull stuff out of my pocket. Massive oversized prop to people's amazement. That kind of magic doesn't land well in Love Happy, because you can literally see he has just got big pockets and it ends up looking clunky. He's way down rather than looking whimsical.
That is very true, isn't it? The key image of him in Love Happy is with this huge sagging coat, isn't it?
Yeah.
full of stuff, which is the opposite of how his coat is supposed to work. He's supposed to be able to produce things at will, not have everything in the world on him.
Yes. Right. That's a fundamental misunderstanding, isn't it? Yeah. Interesting point about alcohol, too. I thought of a couple of earlier examples of Marx Brothers drinking on screen. I think in the party scene in Coconuts, Harpo drinks a little bit.
Drinks with handfuls of liquid, doesn't he?
Yes. Right. And in Monkey Business, Groucho drinks some wine off a tray that's special for Mr. Helton. But that is an interesting thing to itemize. Also an interesting point that Horse Feathers could be seen as a antecedent to college comedies like Animal House and Porky's. I'm sure I'm not alone in finding Horse Feathers vastly superior to those films, but sure, yes, the college comedy. That's it. That's an entire subgenre that's lasted since before the 20s, but as we discussed in episode 41, all the rage at the time Horse Feathers was.
I actually watched Porky's for the first time in my life last year. It's a film that sort of haunted me all my life because when I was growing up in the early days of home video, it was all the rage with virtually every male I knew.
Wait, what possessed you to watch it?
I came upon it. I basically bought a job lot of old VHS tapes, and that was one of them. As indeed was the two sequels, although one of them was too mouldy to play. But yes, I finally got around to seeing it, and needless to say, nothing like the film I was expecting it to be. Moderately amusing, I think.
Here's another comment from another listener.
Hello, folks. This is Andrew Gilmore, longtime Marx Brothers Council member, and I want to share something kind of personal with you because Horse Feathers is a movie that absolutely changed my life, and I'll try to tell you why. I'm from Pennsylvania, so I went to a Quaker school growing up, and it was just a very strict, conservative kind of place. I don't think anybody there had a sense of humor, so I had this kind of unpleasant upbringing. And then when I saw Horse Feathers and I saw these guys, I didn't know anything about college, but I understood, as a child, I understood school and classrooms and teachers. So here were these guys breaking all the rules and talking back to the teachers and just defying everything that I was being taught to follow. And that kind of sparked something in me. I thought, are you allowed to do that? And it just showed me that there was another way of looking at life other than this very, as I say, kind of strict way that I was taught to look at the world. And it was very liberating for me. And they just made me look outside the box and look at the world a different way. And they showed me that it's okay to question authority. It's okay to not necessarily follow the same path as everybody else. My view of the world for the last 30 years has been a little bit askew. I think you can trace that back to Horse Feathers.
So it's also a precursor to the Breakfast Club.
Yes. Yes. Oh, well, that's a great set of comments from Andrew. And it's also kind of an origin story in addition to a Horse Feathers story. For many of us, whichever Marx Brothers film we happened to see first wound up changing our lives. It's a nice lucky break for Horse Feathers to be your introduction. I also might mention that Andrew Gilmore and I had a great conversation recently on his podcast, Mostly Movies, Maybe Music, and that's out there and listenable too. Now, here's another guest, a man who's been a guest on a previous episode of the Marx Brothers Council podcast, friend of the show, as he himself will timidly assert, but he certainly is one. Here is Dan O'Farrell.
This is Dan O'Farrell from Southampton in the UK. I like to consider myself a friend of the podcast, maybe an imaginary friend. As lots of us share, the person who really got me into the Marx Brothers was my dad, who was a long-time fan. And the other thing that my dad was really into, bizarrely, was Gilbert and Sullivan. So much so that he ended up being chairman of the Southampton Operatic Society, even though he couldn't sing a note, because he liked leaping around in the chorus, singing the odd note, and things like Pirates of the Penzance and stuff. And that all came flooding back to me, actually, watching Horse Feathers this time. That opening scene with Groucho and the professors is, to me, maybe the most GNS that the Marx Brothers ever get. And obviously that makes total sense, given Groucho's later performance in the Mikado and stuff like that. He's obviously a fan. And I guess, there's an influence of Gilbert and Sullivan which maybe we maybe forget how influential and how funny actually Gilbert's words are. And that kind of, I don't know, there's a certain joy to it, isn't there, which I think the Marx Brothers certainly share. Obviously, the two things seem quite separate, and Gilbert and Sullivan on one level seems more hidebound. But I do wonder if there's a doctoral thesis to be written one day of the influence of Gilbert and Sullivan on early Hollywood comedies. Someone else can write it, but I think, think it maybe is interesting.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we certainly could and should and will eventually do an episode of this podcast exploring the connections between the Marx Brothers and Gilbert and Sullivan. There's certainly a lot to say about that. Scott Ratner, council member, has been particularly articulate on this point, that I had always sort of assumed that the connection with Gilbert and Sullivan had to do with the songs in the first few films, the Kalmar and Ruby Groucho songs, like in the beginning of Horse Feathers, also obviously Hooray for Captain Spaulding, and many of the other Kalmar and Ruby songs. But Scott Ratner has made the point that no, it's not just that. I mean, that is the most obvious place. But in the satirical depiction of mass love for Groucho's obviously fraudulent character that we see in specifically Animal Crackers, Horse Feathers, and Duck Soup, that owes something to Gilbert's satirical style, totally separate from songwriting and lyric writing and those connections with Gilbert and Sullivan. So anyway, thanks for bringing it up, Dan. It's a reminder that that's on our list of things we will have to devote episodes to in the future.
And not to preempt that too much, but are Kalmar and Ruby on the record acknowledging this? I mean, I think it's undeniable from observing their work, but have they actually, made it clear in the way that Groucho himself did, an indebtedness?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. It seems to me, they must have at some point. But on the other hand, there's not a lot of interviews I'm aware of with Kalmar or Ruby. That's a question to find an answer to. Well, I told you not to go through Australia. You know it's all ripped up. But nevertheless, let's hear from Chad Smith.
Now, if you're wondering why I'm using this funny Australian accent, it's because I'm Australian. I'm in my early 60s and I've been a Marx Brothers fan since the mid-80s, when this friend I knew kept coming to fancy dress parties as Groucho Marx. And when I found out who Groucho was and I watched a few of their movies, I was hooked. Now, if anyone I know has not seen a Marx Brothers film, the first one I show them is Horse Feathers. You know, if they can't laugh at this one, they won't laugh at any of them. I don't think there's anything in this film to analyse too much. It was just meant to be funny. It's not long, but this swordfish password scene is brilliant. Now, when he was much younger, my 15-year-old son, Andrew, would do this scene with me for anyone who came to our house. He'd memorise the dialogue and he even had Groucho's delivery. Of course, at 15, he's much too old for it now, as it is not cool, so we don't do it anymore. But he still cracks a smile when he hears the dialogue. There are many more things I could say about Horse Feathers, but I want to make Bob's job easier by him not having to edit too much. Having said that, he may edit all of this. Who knows?
You got that right. That was about 6 minutes in its original form.
We live and breathe because Bob lets us, folks. That's the way it goes.
Let me just clarify again that the reason that we've cut many of these down isn't necessarily because what was cut out was less valid or less interesting. It was just we wanted to leave in the points that we wanted to address directly. So when you hear the uncut ones, you'll hear a lot of great points and interesting observations and great stories, especially origin stories. But these are the ones we wanted to address firsthand.
The avoidance of repetition is also a big part of that, right? I mean, we could
I said that earlier.
Well, I'm repeating it.
Okay.
I might, in a very good-natured way, challenge the idea that there's nothing in this film to analyze, particularly on this show where we have been analyzing it for years. But instead, I'm going to leave that alone and instead challenge Chad's assertion that impersonating Groucho is not cool. What are you talking about? What could possibly be cooler than impersonating Groucho? I enjoyed your comment a great deal, Chad, but I urge your son, Andrew, to get with the cool kids and put the mustache back on. And as usual, we have saved one particularly elaborate listener comment for the end of this episode. That'll be coming up after these closing remarks. I want to say thank you to our Patreon subscribers. As suggested at the top of this episode, we recently acquired some new subscribers, I think because of the star power of our guest on episode 82. We want to welcome you aboard, and anyone who has yet to subscribe, please at least consider it at patreon.com/Marx Brothers Council Podcast. You can read all about the fabulous rewards available at our various paid subscription levels, including at the lowest level for only $3 American a month. You can listen to all of our bonus segments, and there's quite a few of those now. It's like getting many more episodes. I want to say to our subscribers at the top 4 levels, we do have a couple of subscribers who do not have a mailing address on record with us. If you don't have a mailing address associated with your Patreon account, then Patreon can't send you the fabulous gift rewards, the coffee cup, the tote bag, the t-shirt, the After the Hunt poster, and we can't send you the monthly postcard, which is by now a beloved institution from the second paid level and upward. So if you are one of those 2 subscribers, or if you think there's a chance you might be, if you're not sure why you haven't been getting postcards in the mail, but you should be, log on to Patreon, make sure there is a mailing address associated with your account. We can't do that for you because we don't have access to your Patreon account. You have to go into Patreon and update your profile with your mailing address. It'll be visible only to us. I will use that address to send your postcards, and Patreon itself will use it to fulfill the other gift items. So just a note about making sure your contact information is up to date so you can be properly rewarded.
Now, wait a second. Before we finish up here, I need to do something. I owe Matthew a formal apology. I was going through our archive the other day and was listening to our very first episode, and I came across this exchange.
And I started the Marx Brothers Council as a blog, then it became a Facebook group, and now it's a podcast.
Soon to be a major motion picture. So go ahead.
That's it. I'm done.
Oh, okay.
You squelched my punchline.
It never really occurred to me that that's where you were going originally. So I want to go on record now and apologize for nicking your joke back in early 2018.
Oh, and it still hurts.
Yeah.
I still have sleepless nights about it.
Was that's where you were going, right? It just didn't register.
I have absolutely no memory of it, but it does sound like the kind of thing I would say, yes.
So can we finally bury this, guys? This bad blood that's been between you all this time. Maybe the awkwardness will finally drain out of the room.
Maybe.
Well, I could see on the video feed, it's always you between me and Matthew. Maybe we could switch those up now.
That's right. Yeah, I don't have to keep you guys apart anymore.
Just you wait till I get to New York.
Oh, yeah. More about that too soon, folks. Well, in what is by now a tradition, we are closing our listener commentary episode with a very nicely produced, thoughtful, slightly lengthy series of comments from listener Glenn Davis.
He's very clever. He made something that I couldn't edit down, so he gets the spot.
That's right.
Horse Feathers is a movie almost all Marx Brothers fans seem to love, but I still feel that its true greatness is somehow taken for granted. Nothing like the barrels of ink and terabytes lavished on animal crackers, duck soup, and Night at the Opera have been expended on Horse Feathers. But its 68-minute running time, another great thing about it, is jam-packed with moments that represent the very best of their kind in the entire Marx filmography, along with a number of firsts and some tremendous one-time-only highlights. I personally think it may actually have more career bests than any Marx Brothers movie. For starters, there's the start. Nothing comes out of the gate like this. Barely 30 seconds after the titles fade, Groucho is already on screen at full throttle and utterly dominating.
Well, I thought my razor was dull until I heard his speech. And that reminds me of a story that's so dirty I'm ashamed to think of it myself.
That's one of the big superlatives of this film. Horse Feathers gives us the purest, most unadulterated Groucho. Wagstaff is the Groucho persona distilled to its absolute quintessence. Nothing is not a joke, and Groucho's performance is perhaps the most high-octane of his career. So energetic, so rapid, so on top of his game, so perfectly timed. And that opening speech culminates with what I think is Groucho's greatest song.
I don't know what they have to say. It makes no difference anyway. Whatever it is, I'm against it. No matter what it is or who commenced it, I'm against it.
As if to underline that this is the most essential Groucho, we get a song that is his credo, his statement of principles, if such a thing is possible. For that reason alone, I think it is his best song of any film, not to mention how wonderfully delivered it is. But then comes an incredible bonus. Groucho's song is interrupted by a crooning Zeppo.
Knowing that as I do, I'd not advise you to displease him or tease him. No, no.
And that launches Groucho into a second song, the most baffling, disjointed, and utterly crazed song he'd ever do.
No matter if he's in Peru, Paducah, or Japan, I go ahead or live or dead, I always get my man.
And if that weren't enough, we now get Groucho's greatest dance, which is as disjointed as the song, and the corkscrew leg kicks so associated with animal crackers are actually better executed here. Groucho's delivery is totally mad as he dances on the desktop, preening gleefully, and ending in a cry of triumph heard in no other film, Marx or otherwise.
I always get my man.
Next up is Chico's introduction, which I think is the best he ever got. Why? Simply because we hear his theme song before we see him. I love this because it gives Chico a star status he doesn't always get and builds anticipation for his appearance.
Hello? Yes, lady, this is Barabella the Iceman speaking. What do you want?
And next comes Harpo in the best version of his signature costume that he ever wore. To call it distress doesn't begin to tell it. Half the coat is essentially not there, and both pant legs are split way up the leg. Despite the flimsiness of the coat, it still contains props for some of Harpo's best practical visual gags ever, including the cup of coffee, the cutting of the cards, and the candle that burns at both ends. And we see later that it can be removed in one fell swoop when necessary, which might explain that photo from the set that was making the rounds last year.
Pretty popular place, isn't it? Yes, a hot dog stand and clean up here.
And soon we come to another epic career best, the scene in the college widow's apartment. I think this might be the best extended scene the boys ever did. My only hesitation is the unfortunate condition of the current print, but each of the brothers has wonderful moments here, and the energy never lets up. Plus, it's a hint of what the Napoleon scene must have looked like.
What are you doing here?
Why, me? I'm the music teacher. I give for singing lessons.
Since when are you taking singing lessons?
Since you came in.
What are you doing here?
I'm the plumber. I'm just hanging around in case something goes wrong with our pipes. That's the first time I've used that joke in 20 years.
And it contains two other superlatives. There is Groucho's finest shattering of the fourth wall. He actually steps almost out of the scene entirely and then doesn't just address the audience, but refers to the fact that they are an audience in a movie theater.
I've got to stay here. But there's no reason why you folks shouldn't go out into the lobby till this thing blows over.
Pretty meta for 1932, and hard on its heels comes Chico's piano number, which I think is the most enjoyable of all his performances. Collegiate is a great choice of song, plus there's his interaction with Thelma Todd. It is so charming, so full of personality. They both shine. One wonders if they knew each other previously, given that they both were known to have connections to the Hollywood underworld. Whatever the case, it's a chance to see Chico's legendary ability to charm the ladies via his piano playing, as described so enviously by Groucho. And it gives us what might be the most real, personal, human interaction in any Marx Brothers movie. And if all that wasn't enough, we get Chico's only full song in any film.
Christopher Colombo, he write the Queen of Spain a very nice little note. And he's right all over you, baby, and then he get himself a great big boat. He's a wiser guy.
Makes you wish they'd done that more often. Horsefeathers is the only time that we get all four brothers giving us a rendition of the same song. And of course, Groucho's version is the only time he ever really plays guitar in a Marx film, and he is very good on that gorgeous Gibson L5. The football game is one of the Marx Brothers' very best big finishes, even if it wasn't always the big finish, and I'd nominate it as their very best outdoor sequence ever. The boys always felt a little out of place in actual outdoor locations, like Harpo biking across the lawn in Monkey Business, or the sequence on the rope outside the ship on Night at the Opera. But they managed to dominate here, especially with the wonderful image of Harpo riding his garbage chariot, like some sort of Greek god, and Chico's signal calling.
Signal! Una do a tray a bendy. This time we're going left-handy. Hey!
When the crew I hung out with as a kid played pickup football, Chico's signals always made an appearance sooner or later. One of the hardest things in show business or any art form is to follow up a fresh, successful creation. If you don't believe me, watch Opera and Races back to back. And yet the team behind Monkey Business returned with some key advances. They invented the notion of making Groucho an empowered character, put in charge for no good reason whatsoever, and they stripped down the plot to the barest of bones. And every story turn is utterly without consequence and treated as such by all involved. The triumphant football win is engineered completely outside the rules of the game, and everyone just goes along with it. In any other movie, those would all be faults, but they are perfect for the Marxes at full throttle, and there are almost no scenes without the brothers, and even those are very brief, and you get Thelma Todd, so who cares? Sandwiched between their film debut, then Animal Crackers, then their Hollywood debut on the one side, and the double dynamite of Duck Soup and Night at the Opera on the other, I think the achievements of Horsefeathers are often taken for granted, but its list of career bests and firsts and onlys might be the longest of any film in the boys' career. It is, in short, a triumph.
Congratulations, Professor. Wonderful, Professor. All right, scram, boys. I'll meet you in the barber shop.
As always, thanks to the council leaders, and keep up the great work.
The Marx Brothers Council podcast is produced by Bob Gassell. Matthew Conium's books, including the annotated Marx Brothers, the annotated Abbott and Costello, and That's Me, Groucho, are published by McFarland. Noah Diamond's book, Give Me a Thrill, The Story of Alsatias, is published by Beer Manor Media. To leave a comment and for more info about this and all episodes, visit us at MarxBrothersCouncilPodcast.com. For the latest Marx Brothers and podcast news, look for us on Blue Sky. And Twitter. And join the fun with the largest and most vibrant Marx community online. A club that will have someone like you as a member. The Marx Brothers Council Facebook group.
That's it for now. Swordfish!
That's it, you guess it.